In the unforgiving arena of American politics, a single moment can redefine a presidency. This is the story of how a calculated political attack on a young innovator was transformed by a president into a legendary defense of the next generation. It was a confrontation that didn't just dominate the news cycle, but revealed the personal convictions of a leader and ignited a firestorm that would test his resolve in the loneliest hours of his command. The day began not in the glare of television cameras, but in the quiet, sunlit corridor of the White House residence. President Donald Trump walked alongside his youngest son, bearing a rare moment of tranquility before the scheduled chaos of the day. He adjusted his tie, his gaze falling upon the confident stride of his son, now taller than him. "You know," the president said, his voice softer than the world was used to hearing, "when I was your age, all I wanted to do was build things bigger, better, everything. Your grandfather taught me that. Now I look at you and my grandkids, and I just want to make sure the country we give you is a place where you can still build anything you can dream of." It was a fleeting, private admission, a glimpse of the grandfather behind the global figure, a sentiment that would soon collide with the raw public spectacle of power. Hours later, the East Room was a sea of bright, ambitious faces, the tomorrow's titans. Summit was the president's brainchild, a gathering of the nation's most promising young entrepreneurs. On a stage, bathed in light, a panel discussion was underway. Seated among the panelists was Leo Martinez, a 22-year-old from Texas, with a nervous energy that couldn't mask his brilliance. He had developed a revolutionary low-cost solar panel technology, a project born in his parents' garage. He spoke with a quiet passion about energy independence and a cleaner future. In the front row sat Senator Adam Schiff. He had been invited as a gesture of bipartisanship, but he had come with an agenda. When the moderator opened the floor for questions, Schiff's hand shot up. He didn't address the moderator. His eyes were fixed on Leo. "Mr. Martinez," the senator began, his voice dripping with condescension, "your technology is impressive on paper, but isn't it true that your initial funding came from a venture capital firm that has also invested in fossil fuel projects? And isn't it also true that your projections for job creation are, to put it mildly, wildly optimistic for a company with no significant manufacturing footprint?" A chill fell over the room. The question was a political stiletto, aimed not at the technology, but at the young man's credibility, designed to paint him as a nav pawn in a larger corporate game. Leo, unaccustomed to such pointed public hostility, stammered, "Well, sir, we had to get funding from somewhere, and our projections are based on." Before he could finish, the president, who had been watching from the side of the stage, stood up and walked calmly to the central podium. He didn't look at Schiff. He looked at Leo. The room held its breath. "Senator," President Trump said, his voice calm, but carrying an undeniable authority that silenced all whispers, "I think what you're seeing here is something Washington has a very hard time understanding. You're seeing the American spirit," President Trump said, turning slightly to address the entire room of young innovators. "You're seeing a young man who didn't wait for a government grant, didn't wait for permission. He built something in his garage. He found people who believed in him. And now he's here, trying to make our country stronger and more independent." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle over the crowd. "We don't punish that spirit in this country. We don't try to score cheap political points on the backs of our brightest young minds. We celebrate it. We elevate it." Then he turned back to a stunned Leo Martinez. "Leo," the president said, a smile spreading across his face, "that was a fantastic answer to a very nasty and irrelevant question. In fact, it was so good that I'm creating a new presidential fellowship for American innovation effective immediately, and I'm offering you the very first seat. You'll have a direct line to me and my team. We're going to help you get this done. Are you in?" The room erupted. Students leaped to their feet, their applause echoing through the historic East Room. It was a masterclass in political jujitsu. Schiff, who had set out to embarrass the administration, was left a mere footnote, a sour face in a sea of youthful triumph. The cameras captured everything: the president shaking a beaming Leo Martinez's hand, the senator's frozen, defeated expression, and the surge of energy that swept through the room. The moment lasted only minutes, but the firestorm it ignited was just beginning. Within an hour, it had become the #1 story on the planet. The clip went viral, chopped into countless memes, and the hashtag #HNXGeneration trended globally. News channels played the footage on a constant loop, as analysts dissected every gesture, every line. Supporters hailed it as a defining moment of Trump's presidency, a president standing between a citizen and the political elite. Detractors, however, decried it as a cheap authoritarian stunt, an abuse of power meant to silence a legitimate question. The backlash came as swiftly and ferociously as the praise, and behind the roar of public discourse, the private toll began to mount. Late that night, President Trump sat in the treaty room with General Mike Romano, his stoic silver-haired chief of staff, a retired Marine who had stood by him since the first campaign. Romano placed a thick red binder on the desk. "Threat traffic's elevated," he said in his gravelly voice. "The senator's supporters are organized. We're seeing a significant uptick in vitriol directed at you, your family, and now this kid, Leo Martinez." The president opened the binder. Inside were transcripts of voicemails, printouts of emails, a torrent of pure, venomous hatred filled with graphic threats and vile accusations. He read a few pages, his jaw tightening as the exhaustion of the day settled into his bones. Closing the binder, he pushed it away and rubbed his eyes. "They're trying to destroy this kid, Mike. All because he wants to build something." His phone buzzed on the desk. He glanced at the screen. It was a text from an unknown number. Curious, he opened it. The message was from a moderate Democratic governor, a man he had clashed with publicly more than once. The text was brief. "Mr. President, I don't agree with you on much, but what you did for that young man today was right. You defended an American, not a party. Respect." Trump stared at the message for a long moment before turning the phone toward Romano. A flicker of something, no smile, just a quiet acknowledgement crossed his face. It was a small crack of light in a storm of hostility. The next day, his daughter Ivanka called. "Dad, I'm so proud of you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "But please, be careful. These people are unhinged." He could hear the fear beneath her pride, the quiet tremor in Ivanka's voice that revealed the personal cost of his public battles. A cost most deeply felt by those closest to him. For 2 days, the firestorm raged. Senator Schiff became a fixture on cable news, doubling down on his accusations. He claimed the president was fostering a cult of personality and intimidating a private citizen, conveniently omitting that he had initiated the confrontation. Meanwhile, President Trump remained publicly silent, allowing the viral moment to speak louder than any rebuttal. Privately, however, he wrestled with the fallout. The pressure was immense, the vitriol unrelenting, and his concern for Leo Martinez weighed heavily on him. The young man had been catapulted from a quiet garage workshop into the center of a national political storm. On the third night, Trump found himself alone in the Oval Office. The silence was profound, a stark contrast to the chaos outside. He approached the resolute desk and picked up a framed photo of his grandchildren, all smiling, carefree, unaware of the burdens their grandfather carried. He thought of his promise to them, to kids like Leo, to a future he had sworn to protect. Was the fight worth it? Was the ugliness he had unleashed justified by the principle he stood for? Just then, General Romano entered quietly, a single sheet of paper in hand. "Sir, this just came in," he said. "It's an open letter." The letter was signed by over 100 young entrepreneurs from across the country, Democrats, Republicans, and independents alike. They thanked the president for his stand. "You reminded us," They wrote that our work is more important than politics. You reminded the country that the future is not built by critics, but by creators. The president read the letter once, then again. He looked up at Romano, the doubt in his eyes replaced by a familiar steely resolve. This, he said, tapping the page. This is why we do it, Mike. This was the whole ball game. He had absorbed the attacks, weathered the private storm, and emerged, not diminished, but strengthened. What began as a personal conviction, his duty as a grandfather to protect the future, had been transformed into a public principle. He didn't just win a news cycle. He sparked a national conversation. Across America, people debated the moment not just in political terms, but in terms of values. Was this still a country where young innovators were encouraged, or one where they were torn down by a cynical establishment? Leo Martinez became a household name, a symbol of a generation tired of the old battles and eager to build something new. He was no longer just a kid from Texas. He was living proof that one person, with one bold idea, could still change everything, especially with a champion in the highest office. The event became legend, a story retold in classrooms, boardrooms, and think tanks, a case study in leadership, restraint, and the power of protection over retaliation. Because sometimes, the most powerful act a leader can take isn't to fight, but to shield. So, what do you believe is the true role of a leader in a divided age? Is it to win the fight tour? To change the conversation? Let us know your thoughts below. And for more stories that define our times, don't forget to subscribe.